anything else.
We don't want to know.
We're dedicated, yes,
To our favorite shows.
Oh, my circuits!
Everybody loves Hypnotoad.
Scary dog!
Pearson and Blurnsball.
Futurama.
Good evening. You are listening to a Radulich in Broadcasting premiere podcast TV party tonight. I'm your host, the mandated reporter, and frankly, I'm mortified, Mr. Mark Radulich, but you, good sirs and madams, can call me Wheezy. Tonight, our favorite show is Castlevania Season 3. Brought to you by our favorite show, some people say, is Castlevania Season 3. Brought to you by the good people at Frederator Studios, Powerhouse Animation Studios, Shankar Animation, Project 51 Productions, Mwah Film, and Netflix. Good old Netflix. Are you Netflix and chillin'? I'm Netflix and chillin'. And here to Netflix and chill with us, I'm not using that phrase correctly. Ladies,
no, you are not.
Ladies and gentlemen, the interrupted ignoramus, the man who runs the 411 Mania MMA podcast, the king of MMA coverage on 411 Mania, the coverage god, who will be bringing you all the action this Saturday night from UFC 249 Take 2. This time we really mean it. Ladies and gentlemen, good to his mother, Robert Winfree. How do you do, sir?
I am loosely interested in this podcast, and I say that specifically because, Mark, how long has it been since you and I jointly buried something on a show?
It's happened earlier this year. I feel like we both really hated something. I don't remember what it was, though. But in my defense, I don't get a lot of oxygen to the brain lately.
Closest I can think of, I think you and I were both kind of nonplussed by the Maleficent sequel.
Yeah, we both thought it was rock stupid. And it was.
But I genuinely can't remember the last time the both of us watched some property and came away from it going, okay, get the shovels, get the pickaxes, get the backhoe. This thing's going 20,000 feet under the ground.
Well, I hated Star Wars, but I think the Rise of Skywalker, you were mostly ambivalent, as I recall.
Oh, I hated it. I hate movies that insult my intelligence like that.
Okay. But I think because we also had other people on the show, you and I did not really get to unleash the full Monty of our hatred on it. We had to actually be civil with the other people who were like, I enjoyed it. You know, I can't invite people on a podcast and be like, well, what did you think of the thing? Oh, I enjoyed it. Well, you're fucking stupid. How about that? Because then no one will podcast with me. That's how that works.
Yeah, that is how that works.
So
yeah, we do try very hard when we have guests to not be insulting, be respectful of their opinions even when they differ from ours. So, yeah, this is going to be an interesting experience because even in the past when I have hated something, you've kind of been like, oh, go take your meds.
Yeah,
and, shut up and have fun.
Ward, you're being a little too hard on the beaver, I would say.
Or you just decide, you know what, I'm going to meme on Robert today and just be a contrarian for the sake of it.
You know, I do find that negativity for negativity's sake is not fun for anybody, those listening and those participating. I will say this. I didn't want to fucking review the show in the first place. I got dragged into this by the fellow members of the Radulich Broadcasting Network family. Because I didn't play Castlevania as a kid.
Neither did I.
And I'm not... As far as, like... as far as the kinds of things that are out there in the world to talk about in fantasy and horror and science fiction, I'm not the world's biggest vampire fan. I know some people just love anything having to do with vampires. I can kind of give or take them. They don't really do much for me. So there's nothing about this show. And I'm not a fan of anime either. So, like, all the ways
that is one of the reasons that when I decide to wreak my unholy vengeance upon you, I try to do it in the form of anime.
Yeah, well, I owe you a One Punch Man show, and we will get to it. And I think they're actually...
shut up. You're not going to do it. Stop
I
it.
am. I will. I promise.
Mark.
Yes, sir.
Stop. Just stop. We tried. Life intervened. I'm okay with it.
Don't you want to do, like, Devilman Crybaby or some shit with me?
Dude, you would be suicidal by the end of that show.
See, I feel like challenge accepted.
Oh,
I ain't no
hold
mamby-pamby.
Seriously, you wanna go down the Devilman Crybaby hole with... I've seen that. That thing crushes a little piece of my soul when I watch it.
How long is this thing? How many seasons?
Devilman Crybaby? It's only one season.
Oh, that's doable.
It's 13 episodes, I think.
30-minute episodes?
I'm not sure. I'd have to double check.
Okay.
Here again, if you want to do that, I am down. I am going to warn you. That show is designed. It's based on a manga from the 1970s.
Oh boy, right in my wheelhouse.
Well, hang on. It's had several adaptations. There was a television series for a while. Back in the 80s, there was a series of OVAs in the 90s. It's a hugely influential series if you're into the manga and anime world.
And it's on Netflix?
Well, no, this is the newest adaptation of that material.
Okay, it's on Netflix, whatever it is we're doing? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. The point, we're going to do this.
Okay.
We might do this sooner than you think, because if Jesse can't get back in the game by, I'll tell you. You know what? I love you, but fuck you, Robert Winfree. Just
okay.
We're gonna do it on my birthday.
You don't want to do this, Mark.
I'm doing it. Devil.
Okay.
I just canceled the Umbrella Academy the week of my birthday. We're not doing it now. We're doing Devilman Crybaby on my birthday.
So
how about that?
Keeping up with our habit of being several years out of date for things, because that came out a few years ago.
Is Devilman one word?
Yeah.
Devilman Crybaby. Tell me what the fuck. I'll tell you what the fuck we're doing. That's what we're doing.
Look, all I'm doing is warning you. There's a very psychedelic, you will either love or hate the animation style because it is very surrealist.
Mm-hmm.
And by the end of it, you're either going to be questioning me about, okay, wait, I need you to take me by the hand like a small child and explain to me like I'm four what just happened here. Or you'll more get it and be like, okay, that crushed my soul. I'm going to just lay in a corner and cry for a little bit now. How dare you do this to me?
This is how I want to spend my 44th birthday. Discussing, because here's the thing. Because to me, people are like, are you ever going to talk about Castlevania? Fuck no. If you
hang on, for everyone listening, like, hey, that's the name of that's the title. What are you doing? We'll get there. Trust me, we have the shovels. I promise.
So I feel like you threw a challenge down, and because you're like 9 feet tall and built like Ivan Putski and know all the Royce, Hoist Gracie jiu-jitsu, you can just kick my ass and bully me around and shove me in a locker. Fuck you, man. I don't back down from anybody. And if you say Devilman Crybaby is going to crush my soul, well, let me tell you one thing, brother. I don't back down from nothing.
All right, look, you're a person with great empathy who is susceptible to artistic whims.
Oh, I guarantee you, I'm going to spend my birthday talking to you just bawling, tears in my eyes.
There's a real chance of that. On the plus side, it will give me a chance to throw praise on the director of that show. Forget his first name, Mr. Yuasa, who did another limited edition anime that just wrapped up very recently that I if you like his style, I might pitch that one to you because it's much more wholesome.
Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let me do Devilman Crybaby.
Me chaining you to the back of my truck and dragging you kicking and screaming through the world of anime is certainly a pitch for a show, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know what we'd call that. Devil
Mark
part-timer.
wants to die.
All right, here it is.
The devil is a part-timer or something else.
Okay. Nope, I got it. Devilman Crybaby. Added to my list. Here we go.
All right.
So,
look, if you ever, here's the other thing about that. If you want emotional support while you're watching it, let me know. I will watch along with you.
Okay. Well, I tend to watch these things a week before we review them on my days off. So, usually on the weekends, since it's hard to do the stuff when I'm trying to distance learn my children.
Okay, just if at all possible, I will hold your hand through that.
Okay, well, we're gonna, at the very least, we're gonna talk about it on my birthday, June 2nd. So, having said all that, now that we've gotten through this bit of material, I don't like vampires. I don't like anime, and I don't like. What was the third thing I didn't like about this? And I never played, and I have no attachment to Castlevania whatsoever. So the point is, 20 minutes later, I didn't want to fucking do this show. But when the 4-episode season 1 dropped on Netflix, all the nerds in the Radulich and Broadcasting Network were like, oh my god, Castlevania, and got big video game hard-ons for it, and we're like, we have to talk about this. And we did. I believe we've done the first 2 seasons. Either we did them together or we did 2 shows. I don't remember anymore. So
I think we just did the one show about both of them, and the way that works, either that or I was only on for the second season because I don't think I did the first.
Mm-hmm.
The way this works, for those of you interested in a little bit of behind the scenes stuff, here's how my life goes. I watch the group chat. Okay? And Mark has a loose idea, or we'll post a list of stuff. Hey, this is what's coming out. Anybody interested? And we all kind of pick and choose a little bit, unless you're me, in which case he will have a list of no, Winfree, you're doing this, 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 and this, and you're going to like it. If someone else comes to Mark with an idea and says, hey, such and such happened, and I have any loose interest in it to begin with, any loose interest. I never played Castlevania. I do enjoy anime, but I'm not a huge anime guy. Which might sound weird since I have name dropped a couple of directors. And never mind. Point being, I'm not a huge. Trust me, I'm not a huge anime guy. I dabble, but I watched it because I do like horror. One of my things. But someone said, "Hey, how about this Castlevania thing?" And about Mark and I think 2 other people, maybe 3 others, for season 1 were like, yeah, this is great. And I knew in my head, I knew what was going to happen. I knew that at the end of that, or so again, assuming my memory is correct about how this worked, but point being, somebody pitches something to Mark, and if it is even tangentially related to my interests, I will accelerate my consumption of that media because I know somebody's going to back out. Somebody's going to have some life. Somebody's going to. Now, I don't mean that there's a bunch of flakes. Nobody be offended by this, please. This is not about a bunch of people scheduling stuff and then just being, flaky human beings. I'm not throwing shade at anybody here. But I tend to think in worst case scenarios. So somewhere in my head, I know somebody's going to pull out. Somebody's going to have a grandmother die. Somebody's going to have the virus. There's going to be an armed uprising in the state of Michigan. I don't know. Something. Okay? Something. And then Mark will then come under the thing and go, hey, this is on the schedule and everybody backed out. Somebody throw me a lifeline. And I will be at the side of the pool, the disinterested lifeguard, reading a book as Mark splashes about helplessly going, yeah, this is technically my job, isn't it? So point being, when season 2 came along, first of all, I enjoyed season 2 by and large. But second of all, that was, I believe, just you and me.
Okay.
So, but point being, there's a lot of people that will go, hey, a season. Sure, I'll talk about a season. And then I kind of get roped in because I'm either loosely attached to it, or Mark wants a third voice, or Mark's having health issues, or someone else is having something. I'm the eternal pinch hitter here. And then I wind up roped in for the rest of the series. That's the entirety of my involvement with the Voltron show, for those of you that may not remember.
Yeah.
I had watched it. Mark and Robert Cooper were going to discuss it. There was something where Coop was running 90 minutes late. We were scheduled for Blog Talk, and Mark put out a call of desperation. Somebody help me, and I said, sure, I've seen it. I can talk about it. Well, 5 seasons later, it's just me and Mark.
Right.
This is my life.
That's really funny, actually. It's very true, but it's very funny. So, with all that said, yeah, I didn't want to do this, and you might be saying, well, you have your own podcast. No one's making you. You have to understand something about me. When I
Mark
do...
10 minutes ago, I baited Mark into watching something he doesn't want to watch that is going to crush his soul, make him a depressed wreck on his birthday, and make his children run screaming from the room. Do not let your children watch that show, by the way. Fair warning. Nudity, sex, violence, all of it.
Don't threaten me with a good time, number one. Number two, I saw the MA. They're not going to watch it.
But, yeah, point being, I just baited you into doing that 10 minutes ago.
Because I'm essentially Marty McFly from Back to the Future, and you called me chicken.
Yeah. So now you've scheduled something. We've done 1 or 2 of them. Hell if we're gonna be stopped at this point. No matter how much we all want to go, let's just get off this ride. We can stop anytime we want.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I could absolutely not have done this, but when I start something, I see it to the bitterest fucking end. You know, and this is not
there. We are very truly there.
And this is not a knock against either the co-host or the content, but the interest in doing the She-Ra show was based on the controversy, quote-unquote, around its leaning into the
LGBTQIAFZ.
Yeah, that community, and how because
exclamation mark,
and how
Prince.
Yes, sir. And how, parents of children who might have wanted to watch She-Ra were up in arms about it. And I said, well, this is good grist for the mill. And, one season, you get the gist of what the show is and why people were upset. And we talked about that. We're about to talk about Season 5 because I'm not quitting on She-Ra. Even though the degree to which we were willing to discuss this has long since passed, and at this point there's no controversy to talk about. So again, I don't care how bad Castlevania gets, and I don't care how much I don't really want to watch it, I'm gonna see this fucking thing through until it gets canceled, because that's who I am. With that said...
There is one other... I think there is a singular other condition by which you would stop.
Go on.
I think if you literally could not find anyone else to talk with about it.
Yeah, that too. If Robert
I had said no.
If Robert had drawn a line in the sand, we would not be doing this show. But sometimes you got to talk about something even though you didn't want to watch it in the first place because you watched it and you realized, oh God, this is horrible and people need to know, Tommy. So, with that said, fill us in on where we left Season 2 and give us a roundabout plop synopsis.
That is a more accurate descriptor of this show than plot.
And give us a roundabout plot synopsis of Season 3. Because as God is my witness, I don't remember what the fuck happened in the first 2 seasons, and I was barely paying attention in Season 3. Go.
Okay, get in the pool, Rummy. Season 1 is only 4 episodes long. It's just an introduction to the setting and the characters of Dracula, why he hates humanity, our plucky party of adventurers who are going to bring him down. Season 2 expands on the world and sees our plucky party of adventurers defeat Dracula. I think when we reviewed Season 2, I mentioned one of the more genuinely emotional moments from this entire show is Dracula about to win and just realizing he's about to kill his own son in his son's room in their castle, and just breaking down, wondering what has become of me, and then succumbing to death. And it was a genuinely somewhat moving moment, and there's some great fight scenes, and Season 2 is largely an acceptable thing. It ends with a couple of important points. 1, Dracula dead. In hell. 2, our plucky band of adventurers, which is a threesome, not a throuple, although we'll get into that in this show, trust me. I wish I didn't have to, but we will.
When we get to that, I have some... As a man who knows his pornography and enjoys it, I have some harsh criticisms of that entire... I don't want to call it a scene, because it felt like an eternity.
It's an interweaving of 3 different scenes, like none of which is done well, but we'll
Nope.
get to it. Again, we'll get to it when we get to it. But our band of adventurers, consisting of Trevor Belmont, the last surviving member of the House of Monster Hunters, Sypha the mage, who is OP as hell, because she's a wizard, and Alucard, the Dampier half-vampire son of Dracula and his late wife. Alucard agrees to stay and guard the remnants of Castle Dracula, which planted itself on the Belmont estate, which also happens to hold their repository of knowledge, magical items, weapons, etc. And he will live out his days guarding this to prevent it from falling into the wrong hands, I guess. Trevor and Sypha head off for adventure in the wilderness.
They head off on a D&D campaign.
Funny you should mention that. I'll come back to that. They head off to fight remaining night creatures, try to reconnect with Sypha's people, the Speakers. They're the gypsies, but they can't actually say that in the show. The slightly more relevant parts as it pertains to Season 3. Dracula had a couple of people working for him that are referred to as Forge Masters. These are people... You have to be a human to do it for some reason. Humans with the ability to grab souls from hell, reshape the flesh of a dead human body, and create a night creature, a monstrosity that wanders the world, follows the will of the Forge Master and usually follows it for ill. There were 2 of them working for Dracula, Hector and Isaac. Hector did not think Dracula actually wanted to wipe out humanity. Isaac knew he did and was down for it because nihilism. Hector thought they were going to be controlled and properly regulated because people suck, but I don't want to wipe them out. And yeah, you're half pregnant. Good job. Hector is abducted by one of the surviving vampire generals, Carmilla, and taken off to her country, to her base of power, which is where we'll meet him in Season 3. Isaac gets shoved through a magic portal into the Sahara Desert, where he is shortly accosted by Bedouins, who he murders and uses their corpses to make new night monsters, and then begins his quest for vengeance on Hector, who betrayed them to Carmilla and is part of the reason Dracula died in the first place. And that's kind of the disparate threads that we pick up in Season 3. I'm going to save you all the entire time of watching the 10 episodes of this, because God, did this show not need 10 episodes?
Nope.
Trevor and Sypha wind up in a village, totally not ripped off from the Curse of Strahd D&D campaign setting. I'm kidding, it totally is. Where they futz around with a group of mad monks who worship Dracula and want to merge the earth with hell, bring Dracula back, they think he was right, blah blah blah. A corrupt town judge, because white European Christian men are just the worst thing in the world to this show, I guess. Who is, kind of a silent serial killer that we discover at the end. And they meet a wacky little traveling sort of magician by the name of Saint-Germain, who wants to find access to the infinite corridor, which lets you travel between realities and worlds and whatnot, because this show definitely just needed that wrinkle. He winds up... the one of the only good things about this show is the final fight sequence between Trevor, Sypha, and the giant night creature under this priory that they use to tear open their rift into the infinite corridor, because the Mad Monks want to use this rift to open a portal to hell and pull Dracula back into our reality, and then have him go back again about his business of murdering humanity. Again, they're crazy. So Saint Germain eventually they defeat the night creature. Saint Germain heads into the infinite corridor where he wants to go, finds the person he was trying to find, promises to meet back up with them in the future, although that threat is quite chilling in all honesty, considering how this show has gone. The monks all die. The corrupt judge is murdered. They discover that he was always a bit of a not a full-blown tyrant, but very much, rule of law kind of guy. And they discover, no, he dug a pit trap somewhere in the woods and was directing people who really annoyed him into it. Most of them children, and he kept their shoes because creepy serial killer vibe. They burn down his house, leave the city mostly in flames, promise never to return. Sypha, as they are leaving, goes, I don't understand what happened, and Trevor with... This show is so in love with the sound of its own voice, it makes me sick. But Trevor has a pretty good line of dialogue here, where he says, for the last couple of months, we've been living your life, because they're a couple at this point. We've been traveling, we've been having adventures, and we've been winning. This, as he kind of thumbs over his shoulder to the burning town, with genuine catastrophe averted but no real victory claimed, this is my life. Alucard has just the worst... They don't know what to do with this character in this season. So he's keeping watch over, he's keeping his vigil, he's becoming a little... Let me be clear. When I say he is just depressed mopey boy, it's not that the loss of the first real friends you might have ever had in your life after traumatically having to kill your own father wouldn't have a psychological scar. Like, totally it would. But they play him not as scarred, but as mopey. So the first two people that show up, potentially helping his lonely existence, are a couple of Japanese people escaped from a Japanese vampire who was killed by Sypha during their assault on Castle Dracula. They show up and they want training, and they want to know how to move the castle again, and Alucard's like, no, Sypha wrecked the engine. Like, you don't understand. She melted it. Well, can't you fix it? Maybe, but it would take more than your lifetime. These people don't actually want training. They just want the castle and the ability to build their own empire. There's a really badly done threesome scene with Alucard that they just use as an excuse to bind him with silver, try to kill him, but his magical flying sword says no. Slits their throats. Alucard winds up staking them outside of Castle Dracula, a la his father, as a warning to anyone else who might come near. And again, if we want to talk a little bit about his, they could have written him essentially out of this season, and it wouldn't have been a bad thing, my opinion. And I like Alucard as a character.
Yeah, here's the thing with this whole season, is nothing, unless there's something going on that I just missed, and it's entirely possible. I said, did not pay a tremendous amount of attention to what was going on. But it seemed like it was 3 disparate storylines, none of which were connecting.
4, and you're basically correct.
Okay.
The other couple of points we have here. We have Isaac, who leads an army of night creatures into a town, and for some reason is offended when the armed guards show up. He gets a ascending mirror from a blind man as a gift, and this restores his faith in humanity, I guess, because yay, communism. Sure, take it. I don't need it. He slaughters his way through this town because the guards show up, and he's like, I knew it, people. You showed up with a bunch of monstrosities, buddy. And yeah, they're under my command. They won't bother you. And sure, we know that. But if you're just some town guard, like, you're going to take the word of this guy? Total lack of self-awareness. Anyway, he gets on a boat. He takes it across the Mediterranean, has some discussions with the captain that kind of rekindle elements of who he is as a person. He starts cutting his way across Europe, is pointed in the direction of a town that is composed entirely of zombies that he could use to make his own army of monstrosities, fights his way through, kills the evil wizard, holding them all in thrall, and begins getting to work building his army, now also in possession of a mirror that will open a big enough portal for him to just march an army through wherever he wants to go next. Isaac has the only thing that passes for an interesting storyline in this show, so good for him, I guess. Hector, the other Forge Master, is taken by Carmilla to the vampire kingdom ruled by a quartet of women because... Okay, vampire women, I guess.
Because vampire women are sexy, get it?
If you say so. Two of them are in a relationship, which, let me be clear, I bring that up to explain some of the power dynamics within the group. I don't actually care. It really doesn't matter. The big thing going on here is they want the Forge Master to make them an army so they can capture Dracula's abandoned territory. They can cordon it off, and they can just have the humans living as basically free-range cattle. And they will then be secure, they'll have an empire, and it'll all be hunky-dory except for all the sentient life they're obliterating to sustain their existence. And all of their just kind of casual cruelty. They're not nice people. One of the four, not Carmilla, not one of the lesbians, the other one, whose name I can't remember and don't actually care to look up.
I got it here.
Was it Lenore? I'm going with Lenore until I hear otherwise, because that's what my brain has given me.
Yes.
Yeah, she decides to, just the most basic, predictable, sad, cliched, pathetic plot line ever. She shows him a bit of kindness. He slowly opens up. She winds up tricking him and comes up with a magic ring. Again, the gripe here is monsters created by a Forge Master are loyal to the will of the Forge Master and no one else.
And so so hang on. This part because this part made me laugh out loud. So she basically seduces him over time, and she ends up having sex with him, and then mid-coitus she's like, "Swear your love to me. I swear my love to you." Great, magic ring.
Yeah, she puts the ring on him as he swears fealty to her in this moment. And that means that since he is loyal to them, bonded magically, anyone else wearing a ring like this, he is loyal to them. Consequently, any creatures he creates will be loyal to anyone wearing one of the rings. Oh, and if he tries to run away, it will instantly kill him. And she then decides, no, I'm just going to make you my pet because, yay, let's continue to misrepresent BDSM power relationships in popular media. And seriously, guys, if the Mormon watching this show can understand how badly you're doing this, think about how colossally you have screwed up. And we end the season with, again, the vampire quartet ready to build their army of night monstrosities and create their empire. Sypha and Trevor off back in the world, going on more adventures now, just a little wiser, a little more world-weary. Alucard more bitter and disenfranchised with the world, and Isaac starting to build his army of the undead, while also now having the means to magically transport them, because he's coming for Hector's ass. That's where we are. This show, if I may, in 50 words or less, very briefly, and then I'll give Mark his say. This show is too long. It is boring. It is cliched. It is utterly uninteresting. There are only a couple of good parts, none of which are actually the sex scenes, by the way. The first fight that Trevor and Sypha get into with the night creatures on the road is okay, and then their last one under the Priory is pretty awesome. That's it. I got nothing else for this show that I can say. Again, Isaac is the only guy who has a somewhat interesting things that is going on.
Okay, Isaac is the bald one?
Yeah, the black guy. He's actually Islamic, I think.
Okay. If you say so.
Again, he gets what approximates a good story. Like, I'm saying relative to what else goes on, he's the closest thing we get.
First of all, I want to echo all the... I don't want this to be, a total bash session, where we're just repeating this. We're going to bash it, but I don't want
most of it's terrible. Look, there's a reason I said, hey, there's these couple of things. That last fight under the Priory is genuinely well done. It's great to look at. It's both interesting and easy to follow. The monsters look good. The animation is smooth and not choppy.
Is this the bit at the very end where they're fighting the one monster that keeps like automatically healing, and he's like whipping it with chains and having no... Okay, if you say so. I have issues with that scene.
I'm not saying it's high art, but it's a roughly well executed fight scene. It's one of the only bits of genuinely good animation in this season.
It's readable, and you're right. The animation's fine. So here's the thing: everything involving, like you said, Isaac, I was utterly lost with what was happening to him. I could not follow what all his storyline was, and I was disinterested every time they went to him. The stuff with Alucard, you're going to think this is kind of funny or a little strange, but I actually was semi-interested in what was going on with him and where this was going for a little while.
Yeah, I can see that whole bit has... I suppose that's one of the most annoying things about what they do with Alucard here. Because they're trying to serve so many narrative masters, what he's doing gets shortchanged. Yeah. And the story of the psychologically traumatized, now lonely person being manipulated and taken advantage of in that way is a somewhat interesting premise. It gets short shrift every time, and for some reason they spend a giant chunk of it with the backstory of these two characters talking about one of the vampire lords that we already saw die in the previous season. So, good allocation of time and resources, director.
The initial bit where he's kind of talking to himself and everything,
he's got the puppets, one for each of them, and is making fun of their voices and their personalities. Like, that's good.
Yeah, and because of everything you just said, they don't really have time to kind of explore the depths of his insanity and loneliness, which to me was the real draw of that bit. Now, when he's like teaching the two Japanese kids whatever it is he's teaching them, and I don't know, did you feel like the big over 10 episodes and however much time we spent with them, like, did you feel like the big let's have sex, this is a red herring so that we can get
sudden but inevitable betrayal?
Yeah. Did that come out of nowhere for you?
I wouldn't say straight up nowhere. In fact, again, when I call this show very cliched, the fact that they keep saying, hey, how about we see the engine that moves the castle? And he keeps going, yeah, it's busted. How about we look at stuff that's actually useful for you? And they get slowly more and more like, again, they keep bringing it up and he keeps deferring.
Okay, yeah, I remember this. Because the one kid's now whining that, that no one ever helps us. And a big part of like, when they're standing over him naked, ready to kill him, stake him, I guess, they're like, we're never helped us.
We're in this alone. It's only ever been us.
Yeah, I was like, this is way more melodramatic than it needed to be, and seemingly like vapid and vacant, and there's just no reason for any of it. Like, the trip to get to where they are, and then the execution of it was all bad.
I would so much rather they have just omitted all of this, expand on it, write it out better, and then when the gang meets up, when like Trevor and Sypha find those two bodies staked outside of the domain, and they find Alucard now much more depressed and more crazy, and ask him what happened. Let's get it as a bit of a backstory to how he has descended, not shoehorned in here because, well, he's a title character.
Yeah, we need something to do with this guy, and we've kind of written him out of the narrative despite ourselves. Let me say this. Like I said, I liked part of the Alucard story, and then it just sort of goes off the rails for me. And then, again, let me say this now, and then I'll get to kind of my bigger point. I don't know of the writers and animators and everything, what they were going for with that scene, but I've never been turned off by a sex scene as bad as that one in my life. Like,
Oh, buddy, I want you to remember that you said this, and then come back to me at the end of Devilman Crybaby.
terrific, can't wait. But I mean,
You're warned.
there would have been more life to that scene had it been done in real life, and he had done it with 2 blow-up dolls. Like,
Maybe.
it was just like, it was just so like stiff. I think here's I think here's the problem.
It's okay. Go ahead, make your point.
They kept interweaving it with the sex scene with who was the fourth
Hector
message?
and Lenore.
With Hector and Lenore, and they were
because sex is bad.
And then I think weren't they also intercutting that also with the fight scene at the Priory?
A little bit of it. I can't remember which part of the fight scene, but yeah.
The point is, it all went way too fucking long. Like, I don't know if you ever watched Legion, but they spent several episodes of Legion with in slow motion time, and the episodes are over the course of this bullet being shot from a gun, and because it's Legion and it's psychedelic and they're dealing in mind powers and whatnot, there's a lot taking place. It's not flash time. It was something different than that. Essentially, like there are 2 or 3 episodes that took place over the course of this bullet being shot from a barrel to hitting a person. And that's kind of what I like. That at least was interestingly done.
I'll take your word for that.
Yeah. I mean, watch Legion. Decide for yourself.
No.
All right.
I'm not interested in it. Not saying it's good or bad. Just I have no interest.
This, from beginning to end, and I felt like it went over like into the next episode. It was going on so long.
It ends with him being caught, and then we don't get the conclusion of him, of their motivation, and then him killing them and whatnot until the next episode.
Like I said, it's so long and drawn out, and because it kept getting interwoven with everything else, and there was such breaks in the action, and then there's overly long stretches of dialogue interwoven in all of this, that the scene loses all dynamic tension. It's just, by the time you get to where they were going to, those scenes should be jarring for the viewer. For me, it was like, by the time you get to where they need you to get to, you're like, who cares? I just want this to end. I got nothing out of, their attempts to portray anything kind of, sexy or sultry or whatever, utterly bereft. It was just nothing going on in those scenes. I know you said you liked the action scene in the Priory. I just felt like everything got the whole series is long stretches of endless dialogue.
And so, you know what kills me about that dialogue? I mean, first of all, it's okay. It's not great. It's okay dialogue.
It felt very up its own ass.
Not only that, I mean, yes, there was no one. You've mentioned in the past that you need an adult in the room when you get some of these shows. Okay, no, we're cutting X, Y, and Z. But I spent so much time on it. Nope, kill your babies. It's gone. Move on. This season, badly needed that.
Yeah.
There's so much dialogue that is repetition. It's just a straight up repeat of something that happened 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, I was going to say, it felt like they kept covering the same territory over and over and over again. It felt like a high school philosophy class that just wouldn't end. And then it's like, well, it's all leading to this, giant, sex and violence series of scenes.
This season needed to be 6 episodes long at the most.
Yeah, here's what I wanted to say, and this is kind of like my final thought on this whole thing. This very much now Voltron did this. Voltron would put out half a season that was a setup for the second half of the season, which
that's not uncommon with certain Netflix properties that they have a full season of 26 episodes, but they'll do a 13 episode release and then 6 months later another 13 episodes. Other shows do that.
Even if you did a full season is 13 episodes, but you released the first 6, and that's kind of where I was going with this. This was 10 episodes. This was really 5 or 6 episodes stretched to 10.
Yeah,
this needed a lot of editing and a lot of combining of things, and I think here's the other problem with this, and again I compare it to Voltron, who did a much better job of executing the same principle of basically we need a lot of setup to get to the next place we want to go, and that's what this whole thing felt like, and I think that's why I was so bored and utterly disinterested in this. I'm like, you're taking too long to get to your midway point.
Yeah,
and
entire this is all set up for the next season, which will be the Great War, as the Vampire Quartet starts their attempted conquest. Isaac shows up with his army of night creatures seeking vengeance on Hector for his betrayal. Sypha and Trevor wind up finding Alucard again, and he's disenchanted, but they kind of rally him back for however they do.
Was this all in a game?
No, I'm guessing.
Oh, okay.
But I feel pretty strongly about my guess, if that makes you feel better.
I'm with you so far. This seems like the Battle of the Five Armies, but, I'm okay with it.
Yeah, here's how I would have done this season, me personally, right? It's 6 episodes. Each character gets 80% of the way through, each character or each group gets 80% of the way through their narrative in a single episode.
Yeah.
There's one episode where Sypha and Trevor, they kill the monster, they come into the town, they discover something's fishy, they look around, crazy monks ready to summon Dracula. You have a time, you do something that indicates the time. So their episode ends as the battle is about to commence above the priory, and they're getting ready to do their thing. The other vampires and Hector, one episode, they show up, she explains her plan, they figure out the logistics. Interwoven with this is Lenore's seduction of Hector.
Yeah, that only needed to be 1 or 2 episodes at best.
So their episode ends with kind of Lenore's misdirect that, no, we can totally make up we don't actually need you anymore. We can make up the difference with hired mercenaries. It's no big deal. With her starting her seduction. Isaac ends with him starting his attack on the Wizard's Tower. And Alucard's, if I'm doing it this way, I might keep him, but his stuff gets drawn out a little bit longer and is better written.
I don't think I would have dealt with Alucard. I might not have.
Yeah, again, if I was doing it that way, that's what I would have done. I would have, again, personally, he's done. We axe him from this season,
yeah,
and then we just meet him again next season, and at that point we get the backstory about what happened to him and how he became more disenchanted.
I would have left it as kind of a stinger at the end of the 6th episode, where Trevor and Sypha show up at the castle and he's full Goose Bozo.
I might actually keep his intro, like the intro of the first episode where he's a little bit crazy and just lonely, and then the end when he's walking up past the 2 impaled corpses.
Yeah.
We don't know what happened in between, but we know something happened to him.
Yeah, I think that actually works as a bookend. Like, we start the first season with him, being lonely and getting a fish for dinner and,
being
all
lonely
that.
And still dealing with the trauma of everything he just went through.
And then end it with him walking past the 2 corpses into the castle.
Even keep his dialogue there. He's like, well, get out, keep away sign might have worked better, but I am my father's son.
But yeah, I would have had the bulk of the story deal with
So you have those
Trevor and Sypha, and then, like I said, 2 episodes at best dealing with the Vampire Quartet.
Yeah, and then you have Isaac So we've got, again, like 3 episodes or so. Maybe you can stretch Sypha and Trevor as like half of 2 other episodes. Because you've got to introduce Saint Germain, and so there's maybe enough there to give them 2 episodes instead of just 1. Maybe.
Okay, I also think you needed to give Isaac some action. They needed to give him something to do besides talk.
Talk with an old crone, and I like his assault on the zombies. I think that's a pretty decent sequence. So
maybe,
again, that's why
maybe something on the
why
pirate ship, like have him get attacked by pirates or have him get attacked by the Kraken or some shit.
Or just he buys his passage, and then the next thing we see is him disembarking. Like,
yeah.
Let's just condense this. We don't need the whole thing.
Condense. That's the word I was looking for, actually. But yeah.
So again, point being, you end his episode with him starting his assault for his attack on that town to get all the zombies to make his bodies for his night monsters. And then our last episode is, again, all of them kind of cut together their climaxes. So you have Lenore figuring out how to deceiving and then figuring out how to trap Hector. You have the battle and then the battle under the Priory, and you have Isaac conquering the evil wizard.
And by the way, the stuff with Hector and Lenore and them having sex and her tricking him, 1, you could have done that a lot quicker and gotten there a lot faster. 2, it didn't need to be gratuitous.
It did. It is on the gratuitous side of things, and also, I watch Hector that entire time going, how are you this dumb?
Yeah.
How do you not see all of this coming? Because anyone with half a brain watching this show knows what's coming next.
Yeah,
all of us.
Yeah, that was the thing. It was like, you didn't need him. Like, you could have shown, like, a second of them. I almost think it would have. Well, if she needed to get him to say, I will commit to you, you could have just gotten there a lot faster.
Well, I agree about speeding up the entire process. I will say, to be fair, you want to get him to, say that even if he doesn't actually mean it, but all he has to do is say it. That is the right way to go.
Sure, but I feel like there was a more tasteful way. Either be more tasteful or make it more malevolent. Just them kind of,
Fair enough.
like...
You want her full-blown, like, evil dominatrix?
Yeah, kinda. I just, like... I feel like whoever wrote that scene doesn't really, like, grasp how sex between men and women work. It's just, like, I don't know. It did not ring true to me, and it felt like we got, I felt like the people in the writer's room doing this were like, well, we know that there wasn't a lot happening in this, outside of the Belmont and Sypha story, so... I don't know, gratuitous sex and violence right at the very end will really, pitch it over the top. And it's like they didn't really think about it more than that.
That sounds about right. Alternatively, they're like, oh man, the best stuff in this... You know what? I actually think this is what happened. You had a couple of writers like, man, the best stuff is us espousing sort of the virtues of female leadership, so we have this quartet of strong, empowered women who don't need no man except for this one man who's the only one who can do the thing that they need. And just we're going to explore this, and this is going to be great, and we can write all this stuff and look at all this exposition and all this dialogue, and you had somebody come in and go, did you actually watch the first season? We need violence and we need sex. Fix it.
All right.
I don't know which of those two things happened, but it definitely feels like one of those two.
Yeah.
This
has been greenlit for more seasons, and I feel like they knew that going in, but kind of fumbled the ball in terms of, like, I feel like they knew they were going to get more, so they're like, okay, we can slow down the storytelling, we don't need to blow our wad, because we know we're coming back. But I was like, let's
spend 10 episodes... a 10-episode exposition arc. Like, no.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's like, okay, well, if you know that, this need to be beefed up a lot more.
Yeah, like, either cut this way down or beef it way up.
Right, because here's the other way they could have done this. Because I actually think, like, a lot of the Belmont and Sypha story would have... Their bit of it was kind of okay.
Well, if nothing else, their character interactions are pretty good.
Yeah.
When he finally gets beer again and just downs the first bit and goes, "Oh, this is better than sex," and she gets this look like, "Really?"
Yeah, that was
freezes all the rest of his beer.
Yeah, that was the truest thing I've seen in the entire show. Just women's being women. But here's the thing: like, there needed to be an imminent threat in the scenes with the 4 vampire women. Like, they needed to be dealing with something. That wasn't... just manipulating Hector wasn't strong enough.
The closest thing they have to that is, like, a ticking... The theoretical ticking clock of... Well, there's this giant power vacuum now that Dracula's dead.
That's all
we don't
fucking
jump
off
on it.
Screen.
What?
You're talking about they're preparing for war, and they're talking about a ticking clock, but none of it. There needed to be something happening.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm saying the closest they get is that theory that, well, if we don't move soon, we're going to lose this opportunity. But it's a really kind of open-ended soon. It's soon with air quotes.
No,
I agree with you. If they're trying to ramp this up quickly, there needs to be something more than opportunism.
Right.
As far as let me be clear. As far as enjoying this as a show goes,
they needed either to attack somebody or someone needed to attack that castle.
Yeah, I either that or like she gets back and the castle has already been. It's not in ruins, but they've had to fight something off in her absence. Like there needs to be some sort of impetus for us as a visual audience to kind of continue going along with this. To anyone about to scream at me that it's true to history that all you need is opportunity to motivate people, that's true. I agree. If this were a documentary about it, I'd say that's all we need. It's a piece of entertainment. I'm going to critique it as such.
So I think, you beef up that story and actually give them something to fucking do, other than just monologue incessantly. And you know what this actually kind of reminds me of? Now that I think about it, this kind of reminds me of Attack of the Clones, where there's long.
I'm not even sure. I'd say I can see where you're going, but I don't think it's that bad. Well, maybe it is that bad.
There's long stretches of a forced love story with Anakin and Padme that just that goes fucking sideways at the end, and it's interwoven with Obi-Wan and his mystery adventure, which is then also interwoven with the the clone mystery and the machinations of the Trade Federation, whatever that alliance or the alliance that the Trade Federation was a part of. In any case, it was a giant bridge movie between where they started with the Phantom Menace and where they were going with Revenge of the Sith. And it largely doesn't work because, one, again, so much of and in that one, there, George Lucas, and I've said this 1,000 times, George Lucas isn't really a talented writer.
He's really not.
And so he has the whole thing resting on the love story, in quotes, between Padme and Anakin, and because that doesn't work at all, the whole thing kind of crumbles under the weight. And so where I'm getting the parallel here is you have what's supposed to carry the season is twofold. You have the long seduction of Hector by Lenore. Is that what we said her name was?
If it's not, that's what we're calling her, and you can all just live with it.
Yeah, it's Lenore.
I'm pretty sure.
The long seduction of Hector by Lenore, the misadventures of Belmont and Sypha, and then this other story, and then the sort of mystery of where are we going with Alucard and the 2 Japanese kids. Except that none of those things worked. At best, the stuff with Belmont and Sypha works as kind of a weird, D&D campaign. At best. And that's if I'm really struggling to find something good to say about this show.
There's some stuff there that they do that is kind of interesting. I wouldn't say kind of interesting. It feels like it's interesting, because everything else is so bad.
Yeah, the stuff with the guy trying to find. I think part of the problem was also I watched this around the same time I watched His Darkest Material, and I'm about done with people trying to open parallel dimension doors. I just can we not keep doing the same things in fantasy? Jesus fucking Christ.
Fair enough. No,
one right after another, dude. Give me a break.
I don't disagree with you about that.
I'm just stop trying to go to parallel dimensions. Play in the one you've got. But here's the thing,
Mark, come on. That's the most realistic thing about any of these shows: is the desire to get out of this dimension.
Fair enough. That was the thing. Like, I thought they were telling it. I can't remember who the character was, but the character, I guess, Saint Germain. Yeah, I thought like him trying to get to another dimension was somewhat interesting. When he finally does it, it's so like weirdly psychedelic and confusing that I was like, you've lost me now. What was once kind of an interesting idea has gone, and then I didn't feel like there was any kind of follow up. It just kind of happens, and then it goes nowhere, and then they're fighting monsters.
Well, he doesn't get there until the very end after they've defeated the monster, but yeah, it's like, hey, I'll be back in the sequel. Boy, I sure hope not.
All right. We've said a lot. We've complained a lot. We've pitched a lot of alternatives, and you pitched what's probably going to happen in the next season. Last words.
This is not a good season of television.
This was fucking painful to watch.
It's boring. It's repetitive. It's unbelievably predictable.
I watch a lot of TV for podcasting purposes, and most of it doesn't feel like a chore. This was probably the first time in a long time where I was like, I don't know why I agree to this stuff. Like,
Hi,
I was mad at myself.
I'm Robert.
Yeah, I know you are.
Welcome to my life.
This was such a chore to get through.
This was your little window into what I go through on Damn You Hollywood on a near weekly basis.
You love it. You love talking to me. You love talking to me about movies. Quit your whining. Quit your bitching. Life ain't so bad.
At no point did you just say you hated talking to me about this show. You said the show sucked and it was a chore to get through.
This is true.
That's my complaint about so many of those movies.
Fair enough.
You're right. I do enjoy talking with you about movies. I do enjoy this as a social outlet, especially now that more of the world's locked down. But that doesn't mean the subject material we always cover is all that interesting.
Like I said, I think more often than not, I do a fair job of finding stuff that I think, by and large, the community that we're speaking to is interested. I get it, like, I mean, just the last couple of things that we've done, His Darkest Materials, I'm Not Okay With This, Ozark. People are watching these things, they have following. So, like, it's like I'm not, like, picking, like, really obscure stuff here. This is just one of those things where, like, even this, Castlevania has a following. This apparently,
yeah, this is one of the more watched shows on Netflix.
And I'm looking for look at reception here. I mean, it remained the 7th most in-demand digital original show in the U.S. through 2017. When the second season became available, it reportedly garnered nearly 30 million viewers worldwide.
Yeah, again, these are seen. That's one of the reasons I complain about quality and I complain about things that I like. There's very few times when you say, "Hey, we're going to talk about X," I go,
"But why?"
No, yeah, I can always follow your logic if nothing else, even if I know it leads to my pain and suffering. There's very few times when I go, "Is anyone actually watching this? And if so, can I beat them with a wrench?"
I'm actually curious. Yeah, right now Castlevania has a 93% critical score.
Is that in aggregate over all the seasons? Is that just like I can't imagine? I am baffled by anyone speaking positively about season 3.
Oh, hang on. We normally save this for Damn You Hollywood, but Tommy, they've got to know. Castlevania season 3 has 100% tomato meter reading.
Who the hell?
Rating on Rotten Tomatoes.
Okay, hold on. I understand that by and large, my personal tastes are outside the norm. Okay, I've made my peace with this. I am so rarely this far off. Like, what are they saying about this?
Well,
Who's speaking positively about this show, and why are they employed? What the? That blows. Look, I'm not surprised that there was some idiot out there who thought, hey, this was good television. Like, okay, there's morons out there. Like, Big Bang Theory had 25 seasons or whatever. How I Met Your Mother, people still insist is good. Okay, there are morons out in the world. Got it. Fair play. I don't get this.
I'm going to read a few choice ones here.
Please.
Princess Weeks of the Mary Sue.
I hate you so much. I hate that outlet so much. Okay, no, please, by all means.
I won't begrudge anyone who found the season boring, but I sped through it quickly, and the attachment I felt to the characters from season 2 made me care about what was going to happen to them.
So you're giving a positive review to this show based on the fact that you liked the previous season?
It's certainly the way it sounds.
I'm sorry, that's not how this works. You can reference it as groundwork. And sure, if you watched season 2 recently and were still very invested in the characters, I'm sure that helps. But I've got to go with a great big fat. If your justification for this season is, well, I remember them from last season, so I wanted to see what happened. That doesn't mean it's good television. That means you're attached. And if you want to argue that that speaks to quality writing, or at least quality characterization, all right. Mark suffered through seasons of Oz that didn't need to exist, and he was at least competent enough to say these are bad seasons of television.
It really should have ended with season 4. James Hanton of Starburst. By the end, you might still wonder what the point of a third season was, but Castlevania, but Castlevania lives on with plenty of bite. Arr, arr.
Okay, how does that make sense?
This person is just trying to get noticed.
Okay, hold on. You actually, the sum of your point is, well, you might be left wondering, well, what's the point here? And I might say to you, but the show exists.
Oh, wait. This is better. E.J. Moreno of Flickering Myth. The most shocking series on Netflix.
Oh, bite me.
Castlevania Season 3 pushes the boundaries in the best way possible. Wild to see so many OMG moments packed into such a short season.
Okay, moron. I am so unbelievably tempted to go through Netflix. Okay, no. You know what, jackass? I don't even have to go through the catalog of Netflix's original content. I really don't. I don't have to remind myself of any of these shows that I might have forgotten. Because I can name... If you want to talk about a show shows that push the boundaries of what's possible or what you're likely to see, what about this show did you not see in either Devilman Crybaby, House of Cards, Hemlock Grove, or there's another one that I can't remember off the top of my head. My apologies. This just speaks to your personal ignorance about what's available on Netflix, is all this does.
Hang on. Victor?
Or your generalized ignorance about storytelling in general. How is it, Mark, that Are you and I just that much smarter than these people that we can look at this stuff and go, well, it's going to take twist A, B, or C, and then it takes twist, it's probably going to be twist A, and then they take twist A, and our response is, well, we saw that. We cannot possibly be that much smarter than the average reviewer. I include myself in this. How is this possible?
We're not trying to get invited to parties. Victor Lopez G. of Espinoff.
Oh, this jackass.
We are probably facing one of the best, if not the best, translations of the video game to the big or small screen.
Okay, you know why I'm hesitating? Hang on. The reason I'm hesitating in ripping that statement apart is not that I agree with it, but if you've not been paying attention to how badly video games have been adapted to movies or television, again, this is a stupid point, but the history of video game adaptations is so filled with landmines of feces. I have to think for a second to make sure that I want to disagree vehemently as opposed to simply tepidly. So give me a second. Are we dealing with one of the best adaptations of a video game to the big or small screen? If we're talking about the series in totality, I might agree. It's probably top 5. If we're talking about Season 3 in particular, probably not. But again, the video game to other adaptation is a long and sad... I mean, most of the adaptations that you enjoy, you don't really enjoy them for being good. You enjoy them for kind of being what they are. Case in point, the Street Fighter movie. The first one, not the second. We do not speak of the second.
So, I gotta read you this. Let's start off with the fact this person gave this a 10 out of 10.
Okay, moron. I appreciate you starting with that because anyone giving this a perfect score is a moron.
Okay, ready?
Yes.
Jesse Shadeen of IGN Movies. Castlevania's unique combination of sarcastic humor, supernatural horror, violent action, and deep pathos.
Wow,
Makes it far and away the best video game adaptation around.
Okay, again, if we're going to talk about like contemporary video game adaptations, say Going Right Now. I don't know. I'd really have to think about that one. This is not a perfect season of television at all. You, sir, are trying to preserve your outlet's credentials to get early access to Netflix material. That's all you're doing. There is almost no way that's his legitimate opinion. That boggles my mind.
So, this gets better.
It can't.
James Greby of Observer, top critic. Best around.
Oh,
they get paid for this.
Top critic.
Top critic, baby. Woo!
Vaunted top critic, you flaming pile of crap.
Netflix's Castlevania works because it's using its new medium to really explore these characters and the story in a way the games quite can't.
Okay, couple of things. Hang on, couple of things here. One, I'm going to assume you've never played any of the games. Because if you're talking about the early games, like, okay, sure. A lot of early games didn't have tremendous story. They didn't really have the technology or the capability of going, deep with the material. Okay. If you really want to pretend that's still a valid criticism in 2020, that video games can't explore characters like that, I'm sorry, you're an idiot. Second, if your point is more that the series is doing a passable job of what you want to see in an adaptation, which is to say the following. Adaptations are most successful when they leverage the differences in medium. Then I might be... I still don't necessarily agree, because while this... I mean, didn't we just spend a fair bit of time griping about the static animation over sex scenes?
Yup.
Like, come on, there's no motion there. Friction is important.
Put it on a t-shirt, Mindy.
No, please, look, I don't want my name attached to that. Okay. So, again, I'm not sure I fully agree with that statement, but that's a slightly more passable argument that there is some leveraging of the medium to tell the story that you wouldn't get in a video game. Now, to be fair, because good video games properly leverage their advantages of that medium relative to a movie or a book or a whatever. It's one of the gripes I have with a lot of different adaptations, actually. If you're not going to leverage the advantages of the medium you're adapting, then why are you doing it to begin with? Because I think it's a very valid question you have to ask yourself when you choose to adapt something. Are we actually bettering this? How are we going to properly leverage? I mean, since we're talking about something that is anime related, if you're going to adapt a manga, which is a comic book, into an anime, how are you going to leverage the ability to have actual animation instead of just a very well done panel sequence? Now, the best adaptations find ways to do that. There's certain interactions, certain fight scenes, certain moments that you are able to breathe some life into them via the process of animation that you just simply can't get via still imagery. That's what you want. There's a lot of more or less still imagery going on in this show. I'm just not convinced that is the best argument you could make about this show. And so, you know what? No, I'm going to go ahead and say you, Mr. Top Critic, are probably incorrect and don't want to piss anyone off. Whatever happened to integrity in the business of criticism, Mark?
Oh, you're funny. Black Nerd Problems, Mikkel Snyder. Castlevania is truly a shining example of what a video game adaptation should aspire to be. It has a deep respect for the source material, while also having a fun time pointing out some of the more ridiculous elements of the series.
Believe it or not, that's actually the most coherent thought we've heard so far, because I think that some of the point there is actually well made. This is a show that does in fact respect the material it comes from rather than being embarrassed about it, which is a rarity. But it's also not overly reverential. So, okay, that's actually a fair point if we're talking macro about the series.
Right. I think I found that...
also, hang on. Her critique also has nothing to do with the actual craft of the show.
I think I found the future Mrs. Winfree here. Her name is...
You almost certainly have not.
She's Kate Sanchez, and she writes for But Why Though? And though is spelled T-H-O. Question mark. But why, though, a geek community? 8.5 out of 10.
Okay.
There is a lot to love about this season of Castlevania Season 3. It's sensual, violent, and filled with action and beautiful animation, all while growing its cast of characters.
No, and not really even. Okay, so hang on, if I may deconstruct her point in brief. It is sensual and violent. Maybe it's
I
a little
would
violent.
not say it's sensual.
Unless you're just using sensual as a catch-all for the carnal. In which case, say carnal.
Yeah.
You vocabulary deprived. Okay, so not sure I'd agree with sensual. I'm not entirely sure I'd even really agree with violent. There's so much non-violence in this show. Like when it does lean into it does lean into it unabashedly. Kudos.
I think we've read this person before because I'm just now looking at her Birds of Prey review. It's a must-see because it blows every other DC comic book movie out of the water, and a large helping of Marvel's too.
Yeah, I remember that. I'm pretty sure I took her to task for that one. Hang on, for the rest of her point.
Yes, sir.
It really isn't well animated. There's some decent artwork in it, but that's not the same as something being well animated. Animation is the process of trying to capture motion, stuff that's true to life, and I'm not sure it really succeeds on that level. It's really not growing its cast of characters all that much. The one new guy that we're introduced to winds up living in an alternate dimension because he doesn't want to live on the planet anymore.
Let me say something about the animation because I didn't really speak to it. Like I didn't, I'm already not a fan of anime, but I've seen some anime. There was an honest trailer for the anime series, the Clone Wars, which actually looked really kind of fun, and it made me interested in watching the whole thing because I'd seen bits and pieces of it on Cartoon Network years ago.
For whatever it's worth, the Clone Wars series is very highly regarded by most Star Wars fans. You being a Star Wars fan, I think you might actually enjoy it.
Yeah,
I don't mean that facetiously.
We're talking about the Samurai Jack version of it, right? The guy that did Samurai Jack, not the CGI, the traditional animated one.
Both actually, I think, are fairly well regarded, but I will defer to whichever trailer you saw, I guess.
Okay. Well, they did. Yes, they did a trailer for the anime style one, not the CGI one. I've seen the CGI one, most of it. It's good. Someday I want to sit down and do a whole watch through the whole thing, but because I've kind of gone back and forth over it through different periods. But anyway. While I'm not the hugest fan of anime, I've seen anime done very well. This was almost Flintstones level, fucking, with just anime drawings where it just feels like they're just moving a static image around a camera. That's how bad this is at times.
I would agree with that. Again, and to be fair, there are budgetary considerations at various times. Fair enough. I certainly understand, some of the realities of making this kind of a project. Not saying how dare you, sir, because you have deadlines and budgetary restraints. Doesn't mean we're not going to say it looks that way if it does.
So anyway, all right. So yes, for some odd reason, the critics are just in love with this thing. We are not. Anyway,
this is why you can't trust the critics, people.
So we went down that little tangential road because I said, look, I try to pick stuff that I think people are interested in. Clearly, this had an audience.
Still does.
Still does. We did not love it. All right, so that's the final word, unless you have a real burning desire.
Nah, I'm pretty good with what we said craft-wise, and I have even less faith in the established critics that are supposed to be the ones who have some kind of insight into this stuff.
All right, well...
You want to know why? This is why Mark and I do this kind of stuff, people, because we saw the state of criticism in the world, and we said, no more.
Yes, we are screaming truth to power, such as it is. All right, depending on how I feel tomorrow after my Nevo infusion, I may or may not review the new Trivium. Rob's not a fan, so I'll be doing this is why I say it's depending on how I feel. If I feel up to doing a Sad Man special, then I will. Otherwise, Yankee bean soup with spoon. But next week, we've got a full slate of fun shows. Pat and I will continue our look at the heavyweight, at the history of heavyweight boxing. We'll be looking at the WBA heavyweight elimination tournament. Tuesday, we'll be doing a TV party for Money in the Bank, myself and the Podsman. And assuming Sean can get his act together and he's able to get the show watched and the movie watched, we'll be doing 2 shows dedicated to the High Fidelity franchise, such as it is. We'll be doing the High Fidelity Hulu show, Season 1, on the 13th of May, and then we'll be doing an on-trial for the movie. Now, this was Sean's idea. Sean pushed this, so hopefully he will be ready for it. We shall see. The following week, myself and Alexis Hana will be reviewing She-Ra Season 5, the final season. And then you, Alexis, Jason, and I will review the straight-to-video animated movie Scoob. And this is, again, not a movie I wanted to review.
Look, I didn't want to review it either. I said, in fact, I believe my exact quote when it comes to this in our group chat when someone said, "Hey, Scoob's going to be on early release." I said, "I have zero interest, but will accept the outcome of democracy."
Yeah. And
if I might quote Homer Simpson, when are people going to learn? Democracy doesn't work.
Well, Alexis wanted to do it. You, I think, just kind of wanted to be a part of it. Not even a part of talking about the movies, just sort of, a part of the social gathering of podcasters. Jason cries that we don't ever take his ideas, and I run this fucking shit show, so...
All of
yay!
Those are accurate. Oh, those are true statements.
So yay, damn you Hollywood, Scoob. We may or may not be...
I fully anticipate hating every second of it.
Yeah.
And then having everyone else go, "What's the matter with you, you horrible, horrible Philistine? How can you dislike something as pure as Scooby-Doo?"
We may or may not be reviewing the new Trick or Treat album, depending on if Jesse can come back or not. But Pat and I will be reviewing Season 2 of Dark Side of the Ring. It's been fun so far this season.
That's an interesting way to describe the season.
And then AEW Double or Nothing is May 23rd, after which myself and Larry will be recording the review, and that'll be up on his podcast. The week after that, myself and Alexis Hana will be talking about Book 9 of the Don Rosa, Uncle Scrooge Donald Duck series, The Three Caballeros Ride Again. Myself and Chris Bailey will review AEW Double or Nothing. Hopefully Jesse will be back by the 27th, and we'll review, this was his idea, Termian Catalot, Global Warning. And then, finally, to close out the month of May, myself and Alexis Hana will look at the Disney Plus series, The Legend of the Three Caballeros. So that's all of May for you. Most of those shows might even happen. But there's a pay-per-view, an MMA pay-per-view, this Saturday.
At the moment. It's currently still scheduled.
So Robert's going to quick do his plugs, and we'll get out of here.
Yeah, this last Sunday, I had a communication snafu with Jeff. Apparently my message to him saying we will be recording per usual at our usual time got lost in the ether of Facebook Messenger. Neither the first time nor I imagine the last that particular sequence of events will happen to me. So I put out a call, said, "Hey, anybody, if you're interested, I can do this solo, but I'm sick of talking to myself. The audience is sick of listening to me talk to myself. If anybody's interested and available, let me know. I can make a few minor considerations for timing." And your friend and mine, the punchy pugilist, the Pat Mullen, said, "Yeah, if you give me about 30 minutes or so, ish, I'll be able to talk about it." And I said, yeah, sure, we can do that. And he came on the show, and we previewed UFC 249, such as it is right now. And, had a good time talking about it. We talked about who we think will win between Tony Ferguson and Justin Gaethje. Great fight, violent fight. Might actually cost us forever the possibility of Tony versus Khabib. Seriously, if Gaethje wins, that fight might just be gone, and even if you do make it again, it's never going to be what it used to be. We talked a little bit about Henry Cejudo versus Dominic Cruz. Pat and I are both big fans of Cruz and very big respecters of Henry Cejudo's ability. It's easy to forget how good he is because he leans into that cringe gimmick. So we previewed that fight. I mean, we went down the card, the good, the bad, the ugly, and boy, is there a bit of all of that. And yeah, so there's that. This coming Sunday should be a review of 249 and a preview of the two upcoming shows, one on Wednesday, one on Saturday. Assuming those go through as currently scheduled, I imagine at least the Wednesday one will, barring catastrophe. They've got it already booked. Florida seems very accommodating. So, again, I imagine at least the next one is going to go through. If something crazy happens before Saturday, that one might change, but that remains to be seen. So you can tune in for that on Saturday, on this coming Sunday. Saturday, I will have live coverage of UFC 249 in the MMA Zone of 411 Mania, so...
But no audio coverage because, I've talked for a little over an hour now, and you can already start to hear my voice go. I'm not talking for 3 hours.
Yeah, and I might have tapped out of that anyway, just to enjoy Gaethje versus Ferguson violence.
Fair enough.
I mean, look, if I was not providing written coverage, I would happily do a watch along. But trying to do both and properly enjoy the fights, it's a lot. It's not impossible, but there's certain times when I just know it's not going to work.
Yep.
This might have been one of those. So, Mark, however, will be watching the event because he likes violence just as much as anybody.
Oh, fuck yeah. Everybody at work knows how excited I am about this. It's all I've been talking about, considering I don't have live boxing to watch.
You also are like the biggest believer in the future of Greg Hardy as it pertains to MMA that I know.
And I stand by my earlier statement that I believe Henry Cejudo will pull out the victory, and I stake my claim as the world's foremost MMA analyst on it.
You are not the world's foremost anything.
So's your mom.
I agree with that sentiment. I love my mother. She is not the world's foremost anything either. So you can tune in for those, and I think that's all I've got in the immediate future. I'm not scheduled to be on anything just yet, apart from the Scoob review.
He said with disdain.
Not gonna lie, kind of hoping I get the Rona.
Okay. All right, folks. we hope you've enjoyed.
I find the prospect of a horrible respiratory-related death less painful than watching a Scooby-Doo movie.
All right. For those of you who have stayed with us this long, thank you for listening to us bash the third season of Castlevania. We appreciate Robert for all he does for this network. Without him, many of these podcasts would not happen. So, big thank you to him for stepping into the breach tonight. Until then, until the next time.
Until season 4 gets released, I guess.
Yep. I don't want to make this go another 10 minutes, but if you can, in 10 words or less, how many shows exactly have you been roped into finishing with me because reasons?
If we're gonna count this one, and I think I will. 3 or 4, I think.
Wow. You poor bastard. All right. On that note, be well, be safe, and behave.